Is Nikola Jokic the best player in the NBA? And if so, how close is the second best player, or is he just dominating the field right now? We'll find out more here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Nuggets, your team every day. I am your host, Swipa. You might know me from Mile High Sports, Swipa Cam on YouTube and Twitter. This is my first solo show here with the Locked On Network, and we have a lot to get into today. We are going to talk about Nikola Jokic. Where does he stand amongst the NBA greats now? We're going to talk about Damian Lillard and the trade speculation surrounding him. And then we are also going to get into the NBA powers that be. Who has the best chance to win an NBA championship this upcoming season? But let's go ahead and get started. So as many of you know, each and every year, the NBA likes to put out a little poll for the general managers around the association. And the GM basically put together what they think are the best odds for who's going to win the MVP, who's going to win the NBA championship, who's going to make it out of the East and the West. And the opening question for this year's GM poll was, who is the NBA's best player right now? Now, if you're a Nuggets fan, you remember that in these polls, Nikola Jokic has never gotten strong and significant consideration for the best player in the world. The last couple of years, it's been Giannis. Before that, it was LeBron. There were names like Steph Curry and others that were also taking up the reign as the best player in the world. But this year, according to the GMs and the 15 votes that were collected, when the question is asked, who is the NBA's best player right now? Nikola Jokic got 13 votes, and Giannis Antetokounmpo got 2. This is the first time that Joker has ended as the season's best player and was the speculative best player going into the upcoming season. Now, this means a lot. And one of the reasons this means a lot, because there is now this narrative shift that has happened around the NBA. There's a narrative shift around Joker and around his standing. And really, if you remember this past season, he goes into the year and the most pressure in the NBA is on Joker. That everybody is speculating the Denver Nuggets are going to have Jamal Murray back. The Denver Nuggets are going to have Michael Porter Jr. back. The Denver Nuggets just lost 4-1 to the Golden State Warriors. Jokic valiantly 31, 13, and 5 over the course of that playoff run in the first round. 35, 15, and 6 in the last 3 games versus Draymond Green, Steph Curry, the eventual NBA champions. But even going into the season, a lot of people just did not believe that Jokic had the kind of game to translate to be the best player in the world. There had been questions about his defense, about his ability to elevate in a playoff setting. Sure, he had a great season in the year prior, before last year, 27, 12, and 8. 27, 12, and 8 averages led to 48 wins for the Denver Nuggets as the 6th seed. But a lot of people were wondering that even with the reemergence of a healthy Denver Nuggets squad, did they have the ability to make a real push to an NBA title? And then on top of that, did Joker have what it takes to be able to take on the field? And the question not only was answered, but it was a resounding yes, an unequivocal yes. For the GMs to go from not believing that Joker was in the real conversation for best player in the world, for him to have 13 first place votes, it just goes to show you how quickly his rise have been. This past season, Joker averages 25 points a game, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists, and he has a 70% true shooting. And even then, in the month of March, there were people that were speculating if this was real, if Joker actually was this kind of player. Because again, the last 18 games of the year, they went 8-10 with losses to the Houston Rockets and the San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors. Everybody started to kind of throw dirt on the Denver Nuggets name, as you remember. And because of that, a lot of people didn't have high expectation for Joker. And what's so funny about the way the NBA works is that Joker went on a run that we quite literally haven't seen before. He's the first player in NBA history to average what he did, 30, 13, and 10 over the course of a playoff run, but he's also the only player ever to lead the entire playoff in points, rebounds, and assists. So Joker basically averages 28, 15, and 12 versus the Los Angeles Lakers with Anthony Davis, the best defensive player in the playoffs last year. He then, before that, averages 34, 12, and 11 versus the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And he averages 26, 12, and 9 versus the Minnesota Timberwolves before going to the NBA Finals, facing yet another all-NBA caliber defender in Bam Adebayo, and he averages 30, 14, and 7. What's so interesting about this is that the GM in this survey, they're really just painting another picture. They're painting a picture of how one thing can be so true in the minds of the masses and the public for so long, that Joker was a regular season player. But now, because of the dominating 16-4 run of the Denver Nuggets, the entire thing has shifted. If you look on the Ringer, Joker is the consensus number one player overall. Look at CBS Sports and their ranking, the number one player overall. Bleacher Report, number one player overall. There has been this large, wide acceptance of Joker as the best player in the world. And I think the thing is about this, why I even posed the question of, if he's the best player in the world, is there a gap between the second best? And I think the answer at this point in time might be yes. And the reason being is because right now I would make an argument that in a playoff setting, because of his age, his durability, because of his playmaking, because of his shooting, because of the rebounding, and also because of the defense, in the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, Nikola Jokic, as a pick-and-roll defender, as a big, only allowed 0.74 points per possession. That's 74 points per 100 possession as the big defending the pick-and-roll. That is elite as a pick-and-roll handler. Over the course of the playoffs, opponents shot nearly 40% from the field when he was the closest defender, which, again, is also an elite number. Joker was able to take his game to a completely different level on both sides of the ball, and offensively, maybe in ways that we quite simply haven't seen before, at least not from a big. Now, maybe LeBron James, maybe Michael Jordan in 91, Steph Curry at points in time when he was healthy, 2016, 17, 17, 18 with Kevin Durant. We have some examples. Magic Johnson in 1987. There have been times where we have been able to see players play at an extremely high level. But I think the thing that separates where Joker is right now from the rest of the field is that it's so easy. And because he's shooting 60% in the paint, and because he's shooting 50% from mid-range over the course of the playoffs, shot 46% from three, on top of averaging 9.5 assists per game in the playoffs. It helps to paint the picture that there's almost nothing you can do to him that will shortchange his game at all. And offensively, I would argue there's nothing you can do. And so for a player that doesn't have any flaws offensively, that's the perfect package as a shooter, as an on-ball creator, an off-ball floor spacer, an off-ball mover. You can run pin downs for him. You can run Iverson cuts for him. You can run a Spain pick and roll with him. I mean, you can do an assortment of things with Nikola Jokic as an off-ball player. And then once he gets around the rim, he's basically unstoppable. And so I think this entire playoff run, plus the close of the end of the season, I think it all has aided where we are currently. And not only that, but the GMs also answered the question, who will be the MVP this season? And guess what? Nikola Jokic got 9 votes. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 2 votes. Jason Tatum, 2 votes. Devin Booker, 1 vote. And Donovan Mitchell, 1 vote. Again, of the available votes, the 15 available votes, almost 66% of them went to Nikola Jokic. 60% of them did, in fact. And I think especially with how things went to end last season, there is maybe more expectation of greatness than ever. One of the comments that was made about Joker that was said by the Eastern Conference scout in this article is just how he's good. It's the sustainability. It's his ability to get to a spot and to dominate once he does get to those spots that separates Joker and puts him in a completely different category, seemingly, than the rest of his peers. So, again, Joker is just in a different place in his career, different place in the NBA circle right now, and I think that he's going to remain there for the foreseeable future. So, segment 2, we're going to talk about Damian Lillard. There's more information surrounding the trade speculations and Damian Lillard. But first, I want to talk to you about FanDuel. So, you may or may not be aware, but the NFL season is happening right now, and there are so many things, so many opportunities for you to get involved. So I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Miami Dolphins Denver Broncos game, but obviously if you're a Denver Broncos fan, you did. And it was, for a Broncos fan, was not a pleasant experience. For as you're a Dolphins fan, a fan of the NFL, this was a great opportunity for you to make some real good money and some bets. And so you can snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. $200 in bonus bet if you place a $5 bet. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, then there's honestly no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So make sure, especially as you're getting ready for the season and you're looking at the Nikola Jokic MVP odds, who he's the favorite right now, the Denver Nuggets championship odds, who they have some of the best odds right now. There are opportunities for you to do that. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. We'll be right back with Locked On Nuggets. So we are back with Locked On Nuggets. I'm your host, Swipa. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to get into the Damian Lillard trade speculation portion of our episode today. Now, again, some of you might not be as aware. Some of you are very aware of what's happening around the NBA right now. But the Damian Lillard speculation and trade opportunities, they're not going away. If anything, they're heating up. And so as of this week, we had information that came out from Mark Spears that it might not be the Miami Heat as everybody predicted once the trade demand came out from Damian Lillard and his camp, but it really could end up being the Toronto Raptors. Now, there's a lot of things to talk to you about this. So according to ESPN, there are 2 high-ranking NBA team executives that have told many media members, and especially Spears, that there is real smoke around the idea that the Toronto Raptors are now the front-runners of trade for Damian Lillard. And there is a conversation that this trade could be happening as imminently as before the training camp opens for the NBA. So there's a lot to get into with this. Why is it that the Miami Heat trade for Damian Lillard just simply has not happened yet? Well, the biggest reason is that the Portland Trailblazers and their ownership, they have not felt in their mind that they are getting an adequate level of return for Damian Lillard, who for many is a top 13 level player in the NBA. He's an all-NBA player. He is, for many people, the third best point guard in the league behind Steph Curry and behind Luka Doncic. And so when you have a player of that caliber, who especially this last season came off perhaps his best season of his career, you want to see if you can get a return that reaches the level of equity that you're giving out in this player. Now, when you're trading the best player in a trade, historically, you're never going to be the one to quote unquote win the trade in the short term, just simply because replacing that talent really does take a lot. But I think what's so unique here is that the Miami Heat, they don't have the assets that most NBA teams would covet for a player to the level of Damian Lillard. The best trade piece that they have is having access to first round picks, but it's Tyler Hero. And Tyler Hero is a good player, the former 6th man of the year. He's still very young in his career. very talented scorer, good shooter. And Tyler Herro's numbers in the clutch is actually very impressive as well. But the Toronto Raptors, they have core players on their team, such as Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Grady Dick, their recent first-round pick this year. And they have players like Gary Trent, who conceptually, you could make an argument that if you were to trade for an assortment of those players, maybe OG, build something around Scotty Barnes, that's a more appealing trade package. And on top of that, you can get the first-round pick value back from the Toronto Raptors as well. So fundamentally, if Damian Lillard ends up going to the Miami Heat, I do think that they're going to have one of the three best teams in the conference and arguably still the best in the conference. They've been to the finals 2 of the last 4 seasons. But if he goes to the Toronto Raptors, I think what's going to happen here, if he does go to the Toronto Raptors, they're going to build their team around Damian, around Pascal Siakam, and even for them, maybe hopefully OG Anunoby or Scotty Barnes. And I think having 2 veterans, and I think Pascal Siakam is a top 30 player in the NBA. He's one of the very few players in the NBA last year to average 24, 7 and 4 rather. And to be able to put up a stat line like that, to be a secondary level playmaker, and on top of that, to be a plus defender that can guard ostensibly 1 through 5, there's a lot of value that Damian Lillard could offer to that team. Again, Damian Lillard last year averaged 32 points a game and had his arguable best season of his career, but it was cut short by injuries, and it was cut short by the fact that just quite simply the team wasn't good enough. They didn't have the assets around Dame. They didn't have the defensive pieces around Dame. They had Jeremy Grant. Shaedon Sharpe might be able to develop into a good defensive player at some point in time, but they just didn't have it. And even though they were number 1 in the West at the very start of the year for a while, a lot of that was because the kind of defenses they were running a lot of zone. They were mismatching a lot because they were trying to confuse the opponent as much as possible. But here's the thing. What does this mean for the Denver Nuggets? I think that more than likely Damian Lillard, when he gets shipped out, is going to get shipped to the Eastern Conference. And so that's going to be one less team in the Nugget division and also one less team in the Western Conference that the Nuggets will have to worry about. But it's going to be more so long-term, because if they get Scoot Henderson, they have Shaedon Sharpe, they have Anthony Simons. There is speculation that in order to make the trade happen and also to get more assets in Portland, they're open to moving Yusuf Nurkic and others to get DeAndre Ayton from the Phoenix Suns onto their roster. Now, if that happens, I think Phoenix over the next several years, Ayton, Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot Henderson, and Jeremy Grant's going to be there. I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for them to continue to get better and also to make a playoff push over the next few seasons. But a lot of that comes down to the development and how they play together, how they grow and expand their games as playmakers, as scorers, as shooters, and especially from an intellectual standpoint, how they process through and think through the game. So in direct relevance to the Denver Nuggets, I don't think the Damian Lillard trade affects much, except for giving the Nuggets an opportunity to play in a division where they have the OKC Thunder, where they have the Minnesota Timberwolves, where they have the Utah Jazz. Sorry, not the OKC Thunder. They have the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Utah Jazz, and the Portland Trailblazers. I think having that kind of division, the Utah Jazz, I think right now, I have my list coming out a little later as we get closer to training camp and as we get closer to the start of the season. I think I'm going to have the Utah Jazz as my 12th best team in the Western Conference. And everybody after that, from 11 up, basically it's your OKC Thunder, your Dallas Mavericks, your Minnesota Timberwolves, and others. Those are all playoff viable teams, and one of them is going to miss the playoffs. And so even the Houston Rockets are going to be competitive this year. And then the Spurs with Victor Wembanyama. So I think that what this does is the division gets easier. You can stack more wins in this division because you don't have to worry about playing elite level competition like Damian Lillard, but you're still going to have to show up. You're still going to have to play. So negatively, I don't think this trade affects them at all until the Nuggets, if maybe the Raptors or maybe the Celtics, per speculation, or the Miami Heat are able to acquire Dame, then some of this is going to be the fallout for that trade. But really, a lot of this is just going to be in the Eastern Conference when one of those teams does make the finals, and the Nuggets are fortunate enough to make the final, then that's just going to add to the way that you have to defend and guard the team, especially a team like the Miami Heat. But Damian Lillard trade speculations right now, Toronto Raptors seem to be leading the race there. Miami Heat are right there as well. And then the Boston Celtics have seemingly made a late dive to try to see if they can get there as well. So segment 3 we have coming up after our break. We're going to talk about the NBA powers. Who are the teams that has the best chance of winning an NBA championship next year? And how will the Denver Nuggets match up with these teams as well? We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Welcome back to Locked On Nuggets. This is segment 3 with your host, Swipa. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an amazing conversation, but we have some more stuff to dive into. So currently right now in the NBA, there are a few teams that are favorited to come out of their conferences. And a lot of this comes down to, have you done it before? The top of your roster, how elite those are. But then on top of that too, your coaching and how your bench is also able to help you contribute to winning. And so according to the GM survey as well, in the Eastern Conference, of the 15 votes, there are 2 teams that have the best options of winning the Eastern Conference. The first one is the Boston Celtics. The second one is the Bucks. The Celtics got 9 votes. The Bucks got 6 votes. Let's talk about the Celtics. So Jason Tatum, for me, has been a top 8 player for the last 2 years in a row, which the year before that, he was the number 17 overall player in my rankings. And so for him to get to the point where he is now a back-to-back top 10 player, he just has ascended to a different place in his career. And so Jason Tatum taking the next step with Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Robert Williams, there's a lot to that roster. There's a lot to that team. And so I absolutely think that as the Eastern Conference continue to grow and as the players continue to get integrated with this new system, especially players like Kristaps, I think the Celtics arguably do have the best chance. I think that they have the highest floor of any team inside of the Eastern Conference. But again, that all depends on injuries. If they're not healthy, then they don't. But if they are healthy, I think that's pretty clear. I think that they're going to be an absolute dynamite to try to guard on a nightly basis. Even Al Horford, they're going to look like, it sounds like they're going to come out big in terms of their starting unit, which gives them a point guard in Derek White, which will give them Jaylen Brown at the 2, Jason Tatum at the 3, Kristaps Porzingis at the 4. And then on top of that, they're going to have Al Horford or Robert Williams at the 5. And this is going to present a lot of challenges for NBA defenses, and especially in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So I think they should be number 1. I would also say that the Milwaukee Bucks, here's the thing about the Bucks. The Bucks have one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world. The Bucks were favorited to win the NBA title this last season and to win the East, obviously. But they failed to the point where they lost in the first round. Now, granted, a lot of people are going to tell you, well, think about it. You had injuries to Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton. That was the year he had just came back from injury. And then Drew Holiday was wildly inconsistent over the course of the round. You know what? That might be true. But the Milwaukee Bucks being the prohibited favorite and then having the slide they did in the playoff setting, and right now where they're currently being slotted by the GM as perhaps the second best team in the East, a lot of that just depends on their health. Now, if they're able to stay healthy, Giannis, Drew, Chris, Brook Lopez, that quartet is going to be one of the best in the league, and especially defensively might end up being the best in the NBA. But currently served, I think that they should have the second best option and the second best opportunity to make it out of the East. And a lot of that just depends on health. Giannis's play has maintained his level. It's 30, 10, and 5, basically, for another year. But I think a lot of this issue comes down to is the things that we don't know about, that we find out later, the knee surgery, and then even the back surgery, the back issues he had when he fell in the first round versus the Heat. All this stuff might be accumulating something. So if they're not able to stay healthy, if Giannis isn't able to stay healthy, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, or Brook, then I think that drastically changes. But I think as of right now, they should have the second best option. Now, I'm going to add the Miami Heat to this. I think that, again, for a team that's made the finals 2 of the last 4 years, they just deserve the respect of a team that could do it. just because of how talented they are, because of how they play together, and honestly, because of the kind of defense that they play as well. Just a hellacious defense. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, the way they play on the court together, the way they merge together, all of it. I do think that is a good bet for them as well. I also want to go to the Western Conference, and I want to talk about these teams. So according to the GM survey, the teams that have the best bet of making it out of the West and getting to the NBA Finals, one being the Denver Nuggets with 10 votes. The Denver Nuggets got 10. The Phoenix Suns got 3. The Golden State Warriors received just 2 votes. So here's the thing. The Denver Nuggets were, again, not at the top of this list last year, just like Joker wasn't at the top of the list of the MVP. But once you've done it, now everybody seems to feel like they can adjust. They seem to feel like they can now accept what they see in front of them. And so I think with this, I do think that the Nuggets should be considered the powerhouse of the West. And I arguably, because of the continuity and because of the player and because of the two-man game, because of the trio, because of the quartet, I would even go as far as to argue that they should have the best opportunity to explore their game. And I think a lot of this is going to come down to, again, health for the Denver Nuggets, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, the bench unit, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Justin Holiday, and Zeke Naji especially is going to be really important in DeAndre Jordan limited spots. But again, it's going to come down to their health, their ability to execute, and their ability to get to a playoff setting and just absolutely dominate the same way they did this last season. Now, according to the GM survey, the team with the second best odds to come out of the West are the Phoenix Suns, who the Denver Nuggets beat 4-2 this last year. Now, this I'll say, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and now adding Bradley Beal, and currently also with DeAndre Ayton. That is a lot. That's a lot to overcome. That's a very good team, a very good offensive team, especially defensively. They're going to have a lot of questions. It's going to be a lot of issues for them. But based on the fact that they're going to be outscore almost anybody on any given night, I think that they have a really, really good opportunity. I really do. I think that the Suns are maybe the scariest pull-up jump shooting team that we have seen really in the last several years. Just their ability to be able to get hot. Devin Booker, especially, as many of y'all remember, his ability to pull up, his ability to get hot, his ability to continue to score with the best of them. I think that's going to really aid Devin Booker. I think Kevin Durant is also one of these players. Kevin Durant for me is the 5th best player in the NBA. And so having him with a top 40 player in Bradley Beal, for some of you, a top 35, a top 20 player in Bradley Beal, I think all that together, the firepower, the floor spacing, the playmaking, that's really going to aid them very well this year. And I'm really excited to see what the Suns look like. And then the number 3 team out of the West that the GMs pick is the Golden State Warriors. So Golden State, obviously now with the addition of Chris Paul, they're going to have a lot going for them. I think the off-ball scoring for Steph Curry is going to be the best it's ever been. I think that the fact that they are still doing this, that they're still looking, that they're still searching, and that they're still hoping that another few of these players, these younger players on this roster, are going to be able to step up and do what needs to be done and help them in a playoff setting. Man, that's just a scary proposition. Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, and then having Klay Thompson, and then having Andrew Wiggins. I think that 5-man unit, 5-man, but 6 all together, I think that it's going to be incredible. That's a very good top 6, especially if Chris Paul is healthy. But I think some of this comes down to, though, they don't have a lot of athleticism on the perimeter, so staying in front of people is going to be difficult. But on the other side of this, it was already difficult as it was because of the Western Conference. And again, the Lakers aren't even included in this, but the Lakers are huge. They took advantage of the Golden State Warriors last year. And then on top of that, the Suns are a bigger team than them, and they're going to have also elite scoring. And then on the other side of this, obviously with the Denver Nuggets, Joker, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, there's just going to be a lot to get to. So for me, I think the teams that have the best chance and should be the NBA powers this upcoming season, Denver Nuggets, obvious reason, to the Phoenix Suns. I think that the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be in the conversation. They rounded out their roster, and they're going to end up being really good. And I also think, too, if they're healthy, I think in the East, it's going to be the Boston Celtics. I think it's going to be the Miami Heat again, especially if they get Dame Lillard. And then on the other side of this, I think it's going to be the Milwaukee Bucks. So Boston, Milwaukee, and the Miami Heat. So it's going to be a really interesting season. Jokic, now the consensus best player in the world going into the season. And then now on top of that, Damian Lillard is going to be out of the West more than likely. So that's going to change the playoff landscape and competition landscape for the Denver Nuggets. And then on the other side of this as well, there are some very clear NBA powers that we've seen. That's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Again, I am your host, Swipa. Make sure that you find Locked On wherever you can listen to your podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify and on Apple. Make sure that you're downloading the episode, you're subscribing to us on podcast, and make sure you're liking, subscribing the video and the channel on YouTube as well. Y'all know what time it is. Hey, we'll see you